For as long as she can remember, Juanita has been longing to travel. Even when she was a kid, travel books were her best friends, and thoughts of the world's magnificence made her excited for the future. Now that she is married with 2 kids and no husband, however, her best friend is a couch, and excitement for the future is a long-lost luxury. Raising her children alone, Juanita goes to work at St. Peter's Hospital every morning. She's a nurse, so cleaning up the mess that other people make is her specialty. Back home, she takes care of her grandbaby, Tasha, as well. Tasha's mother is Juanita's daughter, named Birdie. After dropping out of school, she seems to have appeared at Juanita's door with a child in her arms. Birdie's half-brother Rashawn isn't so smart, but he is smart enough to always have a pocket full of money. In short, Juanita is what she herself calls a ghetto cliché. One evening, when Juanita finally thinks that she will get a good rest, Birdie goes out to have fun and leaves her daughter to her mother. Therefore, failing to regain the energy necessary for going through another exhausting week, Juanita fails to even process how quickly Monday comes. After dreaming of Blair Underwood at a bus stop, she returns to the hospital. It's not that bad in there at first, however. While smoking together with Miss Berman, she speaks of her other son, Randy, who seems to be in prison but manages to face her life with self-irony and laughter. Miss Berman was a dancer once and had to travel all around Europe all the time. She's got many relics taken from her travels in her room, and after catching a glimpse of them, the will to travel is reawakened in Juanita's mind. That evening, she meets Randy in prison and admits her desires to him. She feels as if staying there will inevitably mean going crazy. As it turns out, Randy knows that feeling very well. He thinks Juanita should go. The woman is a little taken aback by this sudden support. She knows her other children won't take the same stance about this matter, but knowing that Randy appreciates her decision makes her feel more accepted. Returning to work, Juanita immediately heads towards Miss Berman's room, and to her sorrow, she finds herself standing in an empty room. There's no need to say what it means. Taken by some abrupt tide of emotion, she notices one of the silver souvenirs still laying on the carpet and picks it up. Drawing one final sigh in this room full of lifelessness, she concludes that it is time for her to go. As expected, Rashawn and Birdie take this news unhealthily. They've become so used to motherly support and well taken care of life that even imagining what it would be like to live without the mother makes them anxious. They will have to take care of everything on their own. Answering their childish objections, Juanita says that it is not her responsibility anymore to take care of her adult children. She doesn't have to tell them where she's going or when she will be coming back either. She's done being a servant. Entering her room and starting to think about where to go, she receives some help from the imaginary Blair Underwood, and thus starts a steamy detour from the ordinary external world in her mind. After some suggestions are made and her head starts fogging from Blair's movements, the man suddenly asks if he could borrow money from her. Juanita is speechless. The crookedness of the external world seems to have leaked inside her internal imaginary ideals as well. And so, there it is, another clue for her that the situation is unendurable here. She must go as far as she can. Saying goodbye to her house, she packs her bags that night, and the next morning, she goes to see her friend, Kay Rita. She is the only one who can help Birdie get a job and give her the support she needs to move on to the next step of her life. The woman understands the logic behind Juanita's decision very well. She knows that she won't do any good to her children by staying. Giving her some money, she embraces her best friend and sees her off towards her new life. Juanita won't be suffocating anymore. That afternoon, she rolls her baggage to a station and, checking a map, starts looking for a place in the West. For some reason, one place called Butt stands out to her the most. As a person behind the counter tells her, she has never sold a ticket to Butt, so she has no idea whether it is nice in there or not. Juanita will have to find it out on her own. Going west, thoughts of what she is leaving behind start appearing in her mind. Randy seems to be the person she's worried about the most. He is the innocent man in prison who doesn't demand help from his mother and promotes individuality in her. Arriving in Denver, Colorado, she catches a glimpse of the mountains ahead and suddenly becomes aware of the magnitude of her decision. Going to live in Butt will be an enormous change. She could be better off in some city, but backing away now would mean weakness. This is why she speaks to herself in the mirror in a public restroom in the next scene. Urging herself to get on that bus again, her speech is overheard by a woman in a nearby cabin. After coming out, this woman gives her some cold encouragement as well. And so, Juanita gets up on that bus once more and heads towards the uncertain future. Feeling like the main character, like a hero of her own story who's going towards colorful adventures, she finally reaches her destination and realizes that dreaming about colorfulness was an exaggeration. but turns out to be a bleak place, at least at night. Getting off the bus, all she can see is one neon light and one cafe on the other side of the road. There, the woman she met at the public restroom back in Denver appears in front of her again. She seems happy to see Juanita conquering her fears. Inviting herself to her table, she introduces herself as Peaches. She seems to be a truck driver, smoking her way through cold and bleak nights on the road. Perhaps this is why she's such a tough, but also humorous, person. We can't say that Juanita likes her, but she doesn't tell her to leave either. The two hit it off very soon. As Juanita remembers her old habit of smoking, she tells her about her old life in the ghetto neighborhood, sharing the intricacies of how the criminal life is promoted there by the police and how everyday innocent men appear in prison. She gets gradually closer to Peaches. Once they speak for over an hour, time comes for Peaches to leave and keep on driving. Something tells her then that Butt cannot be Juanita's final destination. She offers to give her a ride to a place that's much nicer, and Juanita, who's already properly boozed up, doesn't reject this offer. After sleeping in her truck and dreaming of conflicting dreams about Blair Underwood once more, she wakes up in a peaceful morning. Coming out in front, she suddenly finds herself in a wonderful place called Paper Moon. With wide open eyes, she exits the bus and gets some advice as to where to stay. As it turns out, Peaches comes here quite often, and she is always treated well. Saying a warm goodbye, she drives away and leaves Juanita in good hands. Grateful for the stranger, Juanita takes a good look around and heads towards the building in front. It is a sweet, small restaurant, very well made and cozy. It is almost unusual that in a place this isolated, a French diner exists successfully. Slowly, Juanita finds her seat and observes the area, delighted by the interior. When the waitress comes to her, however, everything abruptly changes, and she finds herself in an extremely unusual, almost literary situation. Jess, the owner and chef of this restaurant, seems to only cook French breakfasts, while Juanita, like everyone else who visits the restaurant regularly, would like to have some ordinary American breakfast. At first, Jess stands his ground, repeating over and over again that he's not the kind of cook who takes custom orders. But once other people start taking Juanita's side, he decides to surrender. Asking Juanita to lend him a hand in preparing a new breakfast menu, he offers her a new job and asks Mary, the manager, and her daughter, Mignon, to show her around the place. He doesn't seem offended or angry at all. He's excited for this change and curious about how it will turn out. After the very successful morning, Jess has a small, ordinary conversation with Juanita, after which, he takes her to Millie's boarding house. As he says, that is the place she should settle into. Millie's boarding house ends up being a delightful place. And so, once Juanita gets some good rest, she returns to Paper Moon and learns a thing or two about Jess's cooking. There, she meets Mountain, the deputy sheriff, who stops by to get some cash from Jess. As time goes on, Juanita establishes some routine and gets familiar, not only with the place, but with the people living in it as well. This is why she finds it unusual when Jeff doesn't arrive at work one day. As she soon learns, it is E-Day today. That is, the day when a desert storm happened a few hours ago. Jess seems to be unable to let that day go, even now. As it turns out, after that day, he turned to alcohol and was able to take care of that problem recently. Still, on E-Days, he fails to keep himself away from drinking. Hearing about this, Juanita suddenly decides to go to him. Asking where he lives, she exits the restaurant and walks through a rough, destroyed place. She would have never imagined Jess living in such a place. Very soon, the Native American is found in his shack, drunk and with a bleeding hand, crying over what happened to a person named Eddie. We won't get to hear the whole story about it in this moment, but we understand that Jess blames himself for his death. After taking care of his wound, Juanita drains his whiskey bottle and urges him to look after himself. Jess knows that she is right, so he doesn't object. In the next scene, Juanita calls Kay Rita and asks how everything is going back home. As it turns out, things are getting heated up with Rashawn. The young man is with Kay Rita when the call happens, so he does everything to get behind the phone. He tells her mother that he's trying to get off the street and start earning money properly. He asks for some money too, but very soon Kay Rita clears the fog and tells Juanita everything as it is. Rashawn seems to be asking for bail money. The police are just outside, and the young man is about to be put in jail, giving him some words of encouragement. Juanita advises him warmly to think about what Randy would do in his shoes. Everything is going to be fine. The next morning, all take a drive to a Native American gathering, held in a far-off place in the mountains. At first, Juanita is extremely reluctant. Mountains seem to elicit fear in her heart, but the area turns out to be delightful. The community gathered there and worked together to put together a wonderful tent village. The paper moon is represented with their food there, and everything seems delightful until a sudden and unexpected panic attack starts conquering Juanita's mind and body. Her heart starts racing, and she is failing to breathe. She thinks she will suffocate as she is taken inside a tent nearby. There, the anxiety attack fades away as Native Americans begin curing his soul with traditional methods. After saying a short prayer over her and blessing her heart, they sing a song for her spirit to heal. Sitting there, encompassed by his unusual ritual, she feels all the kind spirits of the world coming to her aid. Afterwards, her mind feels unexpectedly light and free, as if excess cash has been taken away by a shiny hand. In a way, the experience she goes through doesn't have only one metaphysical aspect to it. It is cognitive as well. Once the sun sets over the hills, the dancing starts. Juanita is still inside the tent, watching the gathering, when an urge to get out comes over her. As expected, the panic attack wasn't repeated. The next morning, Mary, Jess's sister, finds him sleeping in the back of his truck. As it turns out, neither Mary nor Jess knows where Juanita is. In this quiet morning conversation in which both try not to disturb the natural peace, Mary expresses the thought that she can see in her brother's eyes. Clearly, the man wishes Juanita to be here. It isn't such a bad thought after all, and Jess doesn't object to it at all. Sipping some coffee, he goes off in search of Juanita and very soon finds her on the bank of a river. As the sun starts to rise from the horizon, the duo immerses themselves in the deepest conversation they have ever had. Juanita expresses her wish to go back in time and act differently with regards to her kids. She misses them so much in this moment, but at the same time, she's sure that she's not making a mistake by being this far away from them. Expressing the appreciation he has for her, Jess takes her hand and leads her back towards the gathering area. In this subtle moment, a gentle bond is set between them. And perhaps this is exactly why they keep smiling as they walk inside the tent village. After embracing the tight community, the paper moon people gather in one truck again and get back to their town. Everything seems to be the same as before, save for one simple fact. This time, Juanita's head rests on Jess's shoulder. There is no denying now that the two are beginning to advance in their relationship. As a testimony to this advancement, the two spent that night together at Jess's place. For so long, intimacy has been absent from Juanita's life. But now she unexpectedly finds herself reconnecting with the parts of her own personality that were seemingly lost. In contrast with this delightful advancement, some terrible nightmares tortured Jess that night. Immediately after waking up in screams, an appetite for drinking reawakens inside his gut, and the man expresses this longing explicitly. Juanita doesn't appreciate this, of course. She knows exactly what he is going through, and doesn't think she can trust him fully yet. In this sense, Juanita seems to be taking a step back from Jess, but the man knows that it's only fair. It is only natural that that morning the two speak about the origins of Jess's nightmares. As it turns out, Jess was in an army with Eddie, and he told him to take a step that turned out to be fatal to him. The man thought that the area was clear, but Eddie stepped on a mine, and what happened then is something that Jess has been trying to forget ever since. Juanita believes that it is not his fault. Eddie took that step on his own, and Jess cannot feel responsible for it. Naturally, the problem isn't solved by this sentence, but the matter is closed for the time being. Here, Juanita expresses her will to keep on traveling. He likes him a lot, but she left to be with herself and travel around, and she intends to fulfill her initial purpose. Jess understands this, of course. Even cheerfully, he urges her to get back on the road again and keep in mind that when she comes back, he will be here for her. It is a nice thing to know that somebody is waiting for you. Juanita knows that everybody has their problems, dark sides of personalities, but no one wants to be alone. Going to the restaurant, Jess realizes that their secret is already known to everyone. Instead of getting mad or not paying it any heed, however, he suddenly becomes cheerful and invites Juanita to dance. With this, he intends to bring their relationship out into the open where everybody can see it. But as it turns out, Juanita isn't down for it just yet. The two seem to have slightly different ideas about how their relationship should progress. In the next scene, Juanita is freshening her mind up in the wild. As she hums along to the sound of a rushing river, suddenly, Randy comes up to her from behind. Reactively, Juanita screams from fear, but realizing that it is her son, happiness takes over her entire being. Not being sure how to handle this much positive emotion, she embraces him, learning that Randy is out on parole. Mountain, the deputy sheriff, seems to be the one responsible for his arrival here. Once Juanita takes him inside the restaurant, she learns that Jess knew about it as well. Even though she is completely overwhelmed by positive feelings in this moment, a glimpse of anger crosses her heart. Jess had no right to keep it a secret from her. After expressing this objection to him that evening, a whirling argument starts taking place. As Jess justifies himself, he says that it was Randy's will to not let her know beforehand. Juanita doesn't believe that to be the whole truth. She thinks Jess has been trying to manipulate her. This quiet conversation is louder than any screaming for Randy, who's trying to sleep outside. He is the one coming over and putting an end to this misunderstanding. As he says, everything that Jess is saying is true. The next morning, Randy starts working in the kitchen as well, while Juanita speaks with Bertie in a video call. As she soon learns from her daughter, she has finally gotten a job on her own. Her mom's sudden departure seems to have elicited a positive change in her life. Once Bertie leaves the call, Rita comes in and asks her old friend when she is coming back. As it seems, Juanita doesn't plan to go back for a while. It is clear from her expressions and her words that she doesn't think of that neighborhood as home anymore. She will be going to California soon. And if she decides to get back to Paper Moon again, then she will have a story to tell about a man named Jess. In the end, she learns a thing or two about Rashawn as well. The young man seems to be out on probation now, but Rita isn't sure that he is going to keep himself away from the street. Before Jess goes to Juanita, he sees Peaches by the counter and gets her order. The woman goes inside the kitchen uninvited as well. He seems to be feeling extremely homely here, and perhaps this is why her energy caught Randy off guard as well. As the two meet one another, Jess drives to get Juanita, reminding her that she can stay here. He opens the door to the passenger seat and takes a step back to walk over towards the driver's side, when he suddenly feels Juanita's hand on his wrist. Juanita knows that she's not going to stay, and she wants to give Jess a meaningful goodbye kiss. In the next scene, she receives a wonderful surprise from everybody. Led by the road in front of the restaurant, she sees that the place has a new name. It is J&J, standing for Juanita and Jess. The latter wants this to be a testimony to the fact that she will always be expected and accepted here. Jess, just like everybody who lives here, wants her to know that they will be here when she comes back. Kissing Jess one last time, now in front of the whole community, Juanita ascends Peach's truck and drives away to California. The thing between her and Blair Underwood is finally over for good. Walking on the beach in the final scene, Juanita knows that her life is forever changed.